And we are back with some more Hartford Whalers franchise mode in FHM 8. And in this one, we have the start of year number 2. In the last one, we went through the NHL entry draft for the first time. Got names such as Paul Coffey and Bernie Nichols. And Bernie Nichols, by the way, turns out he has a 4.5-star potential. He wasn't that during the draft. I think Bernie Nichols was listed at 3-star potential, if I remember correctly. Although he's not currently on our roster, he's still in the OHL. But Paul Coffey is on our roster, so I'm expecting big things out of him. Hopefully his defensive category doesn't hold him back too much. He does have the elusive special abilities, so he is very difficult to hit. So that's certainly a plus for him. Here's our starting roster once more. Obviously not too impressive, especially compared to some other teams in the league. But we do have some star players here in Howe, Rogers, Staunton, who was phenomenal last year. 90 points, 47 goals in 71 games played. But with additions such as Coffey and Bernie Nichols, and not only that, but we also traded for John Davidson, who had a .903 save percentage in goal last year for the New York Rangers. It's obvious the rebuild had to be done, but I'm just hoping that it takes maybe 1 or 2 years at most, and that by, say, 1982, maybe 1983 at the latest, we'll be a competitive team again. With that being said, I think we'll advance, I'm going to say honestly, to the trade deadline at least, because we're fairly certain of the kind of season this is going to be. We are far from a competitive team as we are on paper right now. So yeah, we'll get to the trade deadline, we'll reevaluate and see if there's any trades we want to make, and if there's not, then we'll probably just skip straight to the end of the season here. All right, so we're roughly halfway through the season here, January 18th, and we're in the playoffs, and by a pretty wide margin. LA and Quebec are exceedingly bad this year. So even though we are 18, 21, and 5, we are still 6th in the conference, which means as long as we keep up this pace, we should be in the playoffs. So I suppose it's time to start paying a little bit more attention to things. So team stats, goals for, we are way up there, 4.48, third in the league. Unfortunately, it seems we are third last in goals against per game with a 4.59. So definitely a run and gun offensive team, as expected by our head coach being an offensive coach. Let's see, face-offs, we're middle of the pack, 50.7, 9th in the league. Power play, 2nd in the league, 30.2. Wow. Penalty kill, 20th. So yeah, the numbers are matching up here. Great offensively, very poor defensively. Let's check out our players. So Rogers with 66 points, Staunton with 56 in 36 games played. That line is something pretty tremendous. Hagman in his first season with 38 points, 41 games. Paul Coffey with 30 and 41. Mark Howe only with 28, really. That's a much worse pace than he was on last season, that's for sure. And let's check out goalie stats. 875 for Garrett, 886 for Davidson. Okay, I mean, at least Davidson's doing well, but Garrett, come on, man, I need more out of you. I know the team isn't great defensively, but if you're kind of part of that, I don't know. I'm not sure what to make of it. I mean, we're obviously pretty good offensively, but once we get to the playoffs, that's not really going to matter much once we're getting scored on 7 or 8 times a game, you know? Pettersson with a fractured elbow, 1 to 2 months. And he was one of our better offensive simulators as well. In fact, he was the best offensive simulator on the team. 85 offensive grade, and he's down for that long. Ugh, don't like it. Oh my goodness. Mark Howe out long-term, 1 to 2 months. I mean, I can't see us falling out of the playoffs at this point because, like I said earlier, LA and Quebec are just terrible. But if we keep getting injuries like that, we're not going to last long in the playoffs. All right, so we're on March 1st. That is roughly a week before the trade deadline. We're currently 5th in the conference and 2nd in our division, so not as bad as I thought we'd be, for sure. But at the same time, we're not at the point yet where I feel comfortable making any trades, at least not any that would help bolster us for the playoffs, because I don't want to give up any of our young assets, and any other asset that we have isn't going to be valuable enough to make a trade like that. And I think the only way we're going to get any kind of defensive players who are actually going to make a difference is through the draft. Obviously not through free agency, but probably not through trades either, because it's going to be too hard to trade for that kind of player right now. We don't have enough assets for that. So yeah, let's just advance past the trade deadline and get to the playoffs here. All right, it is April 6th, 1981, and we have finished the season 31, 39, and 10, 72 points on the season. We did make the playoffs in 6th place in the conference. Of course, that was partially due to the terrible seasons of LA and Quebec, but I'll take whatever I can get. So let's take a look at the final team stats and the player stats. So goals for per game, we're sitting 5th in the league with a 4.34. Goals against per game, we are last in the league with a 4.60. Yeah, this is a run and gun team, that is for sure. Face-off percentage, actually pretty good there, 51.1. 4th in the league. Power play percentage, that is 7th in the league with a 24%. And the penalty kill probably way down there. Yep, the 72.9, 20th in the league out of 21. Now let's take a look at the player stats. So any injured? Nope. That's a surprise. And on the active roster, we have Staunton with 112 points, tied with Rogers for the most points, but Staunton with 68 goals. Wow, that's a lot. Rogers with 75 assists. Douglas with 89 points. Jordy Douglas, the 2.5-star ability. Definitely expect him to get a boost this offseason, considering he had 89 points this year compared to 41 last year. So that's certainly a huge difference. Matty Hagman, 4th on the team in points with 65. Coffey with 61 in his rookie season. Not bad at all. And considering his real numbers, he had 32 points in his first real season in the NHL. Pretty good. Pretty good. Now, the question is he going to be able to improve on that and have more than 89 points next year? That'll be the real question. I mean, you also have to consider that team did have Gretzky, the team he was on with Edmonton's. But regardless, a very good first year for Paul Coffey. Dave Debble with 54 points, 53 for Stevenson, 48 for Sims, 47 for Roberts, 45 for Alley, 38 for Mark Howe. Really? Oh, well, he did have an injury. Yeah, he had a long injury. That's right. He only played 53 games. So I would say he was on pace for around 60. And there's Hangsleben with 37, 36 for Kissio. So not bad, but was it worth the contract that we gave him? I don't know. Well, it's not like contract amounts really matter too much right now anyway, since there's no salary cap. But still, compared to guys like Staunton and Rogers perform with the amount they're making, it seems kind of lackluster in comparison. There's Neufeld with 32 points in 61 games played. 30 points for Pettersson in 33 games played. He had a obviously pretty big injury there. So unfortunate that he could not finish that season, because he was on a pretty good pace there. He would have been probably 4th on our team in points if he had played a full season. There's Greg Carroll with 29 points, 27 for Marty Howe and Lay. And then there is 23 for Mullen, and 13 for Bennett, and 8 for Brubaker. And then goalie stats, Garrett with an .879 save percentage in 54 games played. Davidson with 37 games played and an .885. So definitely not what I was hoping for out of either of them. Definitely expecting more out of Garrett, though, for sure, especially with that .892 he had last year. To go down to an .879 doesn't exactly inspire confidence, although I suppose you could argue that the defensive core was worse, but I don't know, maybe it had something to do with the fact that we had an offensively based coach. But then again, my personal coach is pretty terrible, as we see. So I'm not entirely sure what to attribute that to. I think I would have to go through another season to really get a read on Garrett and Davidson, but definitely not what I was hoping for numbers-wise out of them. And with Davidson, too, he had a .903 last season with New York, and now all of a sudden an .885. So maybe that speaks to New York's system. Maybe they have a defensive system. I don't know. But defense is definitely not this team's strong suit. All right, I think before we simulate up to the playoffs, I'm going to get Rogers and Davidson signed here, just to make sure that's out of the way. Ooh, Davidson wants $180,000 for 3 years. Is that worth the performance he just put up? I don't know. So I think actually I might wait on Davidson. And we have the St. Louis Blues in the first round of the playoffs, who are 46, 21, and 13. 105 points, so definitely in their favor. We have quite the road ahead of us if we intend on passing them, but it's the playoffs, anything can happen. So I think that will end things off here. And the next one, we'll go through our first playoff run with the Hartford Whalers.